Learning targets we're going to go through today are just the first 3, I think, on here. We're going to talk about slope, midpoint, distance, and graphing lines. Seem like review? I hope those sound familiar. Doesn't mean you remember them, but I hope they sound familiar. Those are the 3 we're going to go over today, I hope. Okay. Everybody got something to write with? Anybody need anything from me? Yes. Absolutely, honey. Come on up. There's some here on my cart. There's anytime you need a pencil, guys, just help yourself. Pencil, pen. You bet. You can keep it if you don't have one for the day. You're welcome. Everybody good? Okay. We're going to see if this is working. Oh, so far so good. Okay. Maybe. Let's see. Pen. Why do I not see colors? Oh, I got to push that little thing every time I want to switch colors? Well, that's a pain. All right. Distance formula. Here's an example down here. I really prefer, you don't have that. I'll talk you through it here. Yes, absolutely. That's why I left some empty seats. Okay, so when you plot these points, or you don't have to plot them ever, but the idea is when you have points, whichever one you want to call point 1 and another one you want to call point 2, I do this mostly in my head, and you don't have to. There's a formula for this. But what I do, oh man, why is the color so painful here? Okay, is I think about the difference in x's, which is the first numbers, and the difference in y's, which is the second number in each ordered pair. And then I just use Pythagorean theorem, because difference in x, difference in y would be this business. If we're looking for this distance of this one, that's kind of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Only write down what makes sense to you. If I'm writing extra stuff, don't worry about it. But does everybody remember Pythagorean theorem? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, this little triangle means difference in, which is subtract. So if we can find how far apart the x's are and how far apart the y's are, square them, added together, we'll get the distance squared, which actually gives us this distance formula, and I'll write it out how you've probably seen it before. So you subtract the x's, and you subtract the y's. Now, I don't know if that's the order. Oh, it is the order. What do you know? I got lucky that they wrote it in down here. Because we're going to square them, it does not matter what order you subtract them in, or even if you use the same order on both x's and y's. What you do have to remember is that you're subtracting, okay? Now, I'm thinking one example is probably enough for this to sound fresh in your mind. Does that seem okay? Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide here in a second, but I will make sure everybody has the one form or the other written down. And I'm really okay. On the quiz, it's gonna ask you to write the distance formula. I'm okay with either version of that you write down, whatever makes sense to you, okay? Or even if you said it like this, that indicates subtraction for me, so I'm gonna think that you understand that. All right, next page. Let's do number 3 together. All right, so this is x1, y1, x2, y2. And most of you don't probably need to even do that part, but if it helps you. And then we are supposed to find the difference in the x's. So if you were doing the fancy way, it would be -3 minus -2 quantity squared. That's a lot of craziness to me. In my mind, I picture a number line. How far apart are -2 and -3, guys? 1 unit, right? So this is 1. And I would have just written down 1 squared. But this is the fancy if you want to do the formal way. Okay. And then you have the y's back here. The second y minus the first y. Now again, I would have just looked at those numbers. 4 and 5 are how far apart? 1. And then you could type in your calculator either this crazy business or this crazy business. Do not type the square root in because I don't want to well, yes, this says to the decimal. I'm kidding. I think on the quiz, it's fine if you leave it as a radical. I don't remember what it says. We'll get, when we get closer to the quiz, I'll review that. But 1 plus 1, right? 1 times 1 is 1. So 1 squared plus 1 squared would be 2. So square root of 2, I'm guessing 1.14, 1.4. Who's got a calculator going? Is it 1.4? 1.1? 1.4, I think. Anybody got a calculator? 1.41. Yeah. Just the, to the nearest tenth would actually be 1.4. Okay. I would prefer that you left it square root of 2, but that's not what the direction says here. Any questions? Okay, real quick. If we're doing radical work, like if the answer had been square root of 27, do you remember doing the whole 9 is a perfect square and it divides in there? So you break this down, 9 and 3, the square root of 9 is exactly 3, so you get 3 square roots of 3. If you're not comfortable with that, in tonight's lesson, there will be a worksheet with 10 problems practicing that concept, if reviewing, simplifying radicals, if you need some work on that, okay? When I don't think I put it in the packet, but it's in the, spit it out, Hofbauer. When I post today's materials, there's an extra practice worksheet there, and I'll mention it in the description so that you can find it. It has answers with it too. Okay, moving on. Midpoint. Midpoint is my favorite, and students do silly things like subtract, and I just want to cry. If you get an A and you get 100% on something and a 70% on something, what does the teacher do to figure your grade usually? Add and divide by 2, right? Average those. That's all we're doing for finding the middle, is averaging. You can just remember that. So you're going to add the x's and divide by 2. So if we had a point here and a point down here, we'd have x1, y1, x2, y2. We really don't need to spend time drawing this probably. Whoa, nice straight line. Go Hofbauer. Okay, you add the two x values together and you divide by 2. And that gives you the new midpoint. And then you add the two y values together. People do subtracting, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're averaging. You don't need to subtract when you average. You add and divide by 2. Now, if I had this labeled as, no, that's not, I want a pen. -3, 3, and this one looks like 4, 0. Everybody good with those values? Did I plot? Okay. If I wanted to average those, can I just type -3 plus 4 divided by 2 on my calculator? What's the order of operations going to do to that? It's going to divide first, right? This is not going to give you the right answer. You either have to do -3 plus 4 in parentheses like I wrote over here, or I would just hit enter divided by 2. Make sense? -3 plus 4 is 1, divided by 2 is 1/2 or 0.5. And then you'd go back and do the y's, and I really would like another color, but I'm struggling today. I'll get better at this. I gotta do something with what's displayed up there. And the y's would be 3 plus 0 divided by 2, which if you do it on the calculator, that particular one I think would be right either way, but that's 1.5 or 3/2. Okay, I'm not sure I need to do another example, but I can real fast, maybe. What time are we out of here? Anybody helping me? 10:16. Oh, we're doing okay, because I'm not going to do very much stuff today. Do I need to slow down? Everybody all right? All right, number 6. Who can talk me through? What are the x's? 10 and 8. So we're going to add and divide by 2. If we were using a calculator, we'd want to do 10 plus 8 first and then divide by 2. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. Does that sound good to everybody? And then if I switch to green for the y's, these are y1 and y2 back here. So we'd have -7 and 2 Now, if you did that on the calculator, it would only divide in order, -7 plus 2 divided by 2 without any parentheses. You'd get -6 because it would only divide the 2 by 2. We want to add and then divide by 2. So we would get -5 halves or -2.5. If I make a silly mistake, because, you know, adding and subtracting, I don't have to be very good at that to be a math teacher. So just let me know if I make a silly mistake, because I hate when I post a video where I'm writing, you know, 4 plus 2 equals 11 or something ridiculous. So just holler at me if I make a mistake. Or just go, Ms. Hoffbauer, is that right? I know you're too nice to yell at me. Okay. Then we have slope. I don't know why this is the hardest of all for students, because you all forget that it's change in y over change in x. I don't know if it's you forget which way the axis goes or you just get confused for a moment. I understand, because I'm confused most of the time. But slope is change in y over change in x, which means, ooh, that was a funky y. You're going to subtract the y's on the top and you're going to subtract the x's on the bottom. And if you remember the good old rise over run, remember rise is up and down, how much did it change, and run is how much it changed across. Yeah, I wrote that really crooked, sorry. So, yeah, and we call it M when we do slope-intercept form, right? Do you need to move up? You can come right up here if you want, and we can move my cart, or you can just move up one, whatever you think will help. Anybody else not seeing well? Oh, I know what we can do. Aubrey, right? Could you hit the light switch closest to the door? That's what Oh, okay. Okay, no worries. Nope, let's switch that around. I must have did the wrong one. Yay. Does that help some of you? He said we're going to get a new projector, so then it'll be much brighter and better, but I will post these notes too, the PDF form of them, okay? I encourage you still to take notes in class, because I don't know about you, but I process when I write things down. It helps to involve both your kinesthetic learning and your visual learning and listening to me, okay? So I would really suggest you still take the notes, but I will post them in PDF form, which will be nice and colorful and everything, okay? And I encourage you to take notes in color if you want. All right, let's do number 8. So I'm gonna use a little extra colors than this one because slope somehow is the hardest one for students. Well, let's start with this. I'm gonna call the X1 and X2. Now you can switch those around. If you wanna do the other point is 0.1 and the other point is 0.2, it doesn't matter. And then I'm gonna do the Y's in a different color. Okay, but then to do change in y over change in x, we're going to subtract the y's here. So I'm going to do 8 minus 13. You could do 13 minus 8, but if you do 13 minus 8, then you got to do the x's in that same order. So I'm going to do 8 minus 13. And then I'm going to get this fixed by tomorrow. -4 minus -16. All right, 8 minus 13. On a good day, -5. How'd I do? Minus a negative turns to plus positive, so -4 plus 16 is 12, right? Okay. So if we were graphing that, you could go down 5 and write 12, or you could move the negative in your brain to the bottom and say, I'm going to go up 5, but left 12, because that would be the same thing, okay? When we go to graph in a minute, we'll talk more about that. But if we were graphing down 5 and over 12 and up 5 and back 12 would be the same tilt. Everybody good with what I'm saying? Okay. So there's an example of slope. Guess what your homework's going to be? Just go back and do the ones I skipped. That's it, okay? Number 11, let's go to this one. Now, do you remember how to graph a line? this y-intercept business, remember this is the y-axis here. I should have a green pen. Do I have a green pen? Okay, so this number back here is the y-intercept, so that's where we cross the y, not the x. Be real careful, that's the y-intercept. So that y-intercept is actually 0, 1. You don't have to write that necessarily, but just so we're clear, that's the ordered pair, 0, 1. And then the slope, let's see, they have blue. Do I have a blue? Negative 1/3 is the slope. Whoa. Yeah, that clearly says slope, sorry. We can go down 1 and to the right 3. Or we could think of it as up 1 and, whoa, that's a really big negative. I am struggling here, sorry. We could go up 1 and left 3, and you should see that that's the same line, right? Okay, Hofbauer does not do well at this, so how about if we grab this and actually, I still didn't manage to get all 3 lines. Oh. Okay, so how many of you asked someone, anybody know Hofbauer? Any of your friends like, what'd they say? She's mean and awful, right? Anybody have an older sibling? Molly, Paige, Aubrey. Who had me?
I don't know.
Don't know? Okay. That's, no, math team, yep. Paige, is that right? Okay, because I had your sister too, and I'm going to call you by her name. But anyway, I had Paige's mom. That's how old I am, guys. I've been teaching here since 1991. Yes, yes, yes. I wrote that down, Jada. When I saw your name, I was like, I actually have a little note about whose brothers and sisters I knew I had, or siblings or parents. All right, let's finish the video here. We don't need to entertain anyone with this conversation. Everyone. When you see x equals 2 or y equals 5, or what, this means it's a either horizontal or vertical line, right? When it just has x equals or y equals. I used to get these really confused when I was in school. And then someone showed me this. They said, well, x equals 2 means that x is always 2, no matter what point you're graphing, right? So you could graph a 0, a 1, and negative 1. So I go over 2, up 0, over 2, up 1, over 2, down 1. Oh, look what I got. X equals 2 is a vertical line. Okay, so this turned out to be a vertical line, which means it has undefined slope. If we found the slope between any two of those points, we'd go like 1 minus 0 over 2 minus 2, and we'd get 1 over 0, which is undefined, dividing by 0. Okay, that's more information than I really cared about today, but just trying to review a bunch of extra stuff. Everybody okay? All right, I think I got one more question to do with you. This is going better than I thought, or I'm just talking too fast. It's really hard for a teacher to adjust from 90 minutes to 45. Yeah. Like in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, how much can we get through? I'm sure to you guys, it feels nice to be done after 45 minutes, but at the same time, thinking about homework in 7 classes has got to be overwhelming. Hopefully you don't have 7 academic classes, but I'm sure a couple of you do. All right. I'd like to graph this number 13 2 different ways, okay? Eventually, I would like you to work on learning to graph. This is called standard form, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. See how it has an x, a y on the same side, and a constant on the other side? I would eventually like you to kind of practice graphing standard form lines by finding the intercepts, okay? So you're going to put in a 0 for x. Some teachers call this the cover-up method. Because if I put a 0 in right here, this is gone, right? If I put a 0 in for the x, everybody with me? That's gone. So what's left says 2y equals 6. Well, if I divide by 2, I get y equals 3. So I just found 1 point, but over 0, up 3 is on this line, okay? Now I'm going to erase this little cover up here. And then I'm going to put the 0 in for y. If I put a 0, got to have a pen, Hofbauer. If I put a 0 in back here, 2 times 0 would be 0, right? So all I would have left is it would say x equals 6. So 6, 0 is also an intercept. It happens to be called the x-intercept. Ooh, I hit both dots almost. There's a very famous theorem in math called the Hofbauer big dot theorem. That's where you make the dot bigger so the line hits it, okay? This line is the one that they asked for here. We found the intercepts. Now, most of you would not have done that. Most of you, I'm guessing, would have solved for y, yes? X plus 2y equals 6. You would have said, oh, I must subtract that x over here. Now, those are not like terms. So I still have 2y equals a negative x and a positive 6 added on. And then to get the y by itself, I'm going to divide everything by 2. So I get y equals, now there's a 1 in front of this x, the good old invisible math. Negative 1/2 x plus 6 divided by 2 is 3. Is that the line we graphed? We started at 3, down 1 and over 2, down 1 and over 2, same line. If you're more comfortable with that, I don't care. I'm just going to show you standard form graphing by intercepts frequently so you get a little more comfortable with it. Does that sound okay? But on a test or quiz, I don't care how you got to the right answer. Any questions? All right, we have like 3 minutes. I'm going to stop the recording.